Hi, my name is Cornell Daniels. I'm the host today for the How To Show. And today's show is going to be How Important is Education? Today's guest, Derrick Smith. I'm sitting here with his bio, and he has quite an extensive list here. We're going to do an interview with him and try to go over some of the things. He has a very interesting background and life that I think will help a lot of people out there that could use a lot of, how should I say, his information and his experience that he has. How you doing today, Derrick?
Good, and yourself?
All right. So you got quite a list here, as I said, and I guess what we'll do is we'll start with your life, but you have three categories here. But first, let's start off with Derrick Smith here. You want to tell me where you grew up and some background on you?
Sure. First, I was born and raised in the South, Florida.
Okay.
I grew up in Georgia, with a single mom. I grew up without a father. Single mom, she raised four of us by herself. I have two sisters who are both older than me, and I have a younger brother. I again, born in Florida and grew up in Georgia, and, it wasn't easy.
And so today's show is about education, and so you were saying, now at that time with the family, how important was education in the family structure?
Well, first of all, my mom didn't, graduate from high school, and I grew up without a father.
Okay.
Actually, I only had one uncle, and I'm the first grandson, so I didn't have a male role model because
Okay.
Yeah, because my uncle, my only uncle, he was living his life, and I hardly ever saw him growing up as a kid.
So who was the inspiration for the education? Your mom?
My mom, she was tough on us. She made us go to school. She made us go to church. And as far as school, I didn't do too good in school. I repeated the second grade, I repeated the seventh grade, and also the eighth grade. And so I always say I don't believe it was because I was dumb, wasn't a smart kid. I used to talk a lot in school. I mean, a lot. And back then, when I was growing up in school, they had, how they have the 5 subjects like math, science, social studies, English. We had conduct. And I would have all what you guys call F's out here. We were getting E's, and
And the E represented?
fail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I would have all E's in conduct. You would get 4 report cards in grade and middle school, and I would have all E's, and that's why I repeated 2nd, 7th, and 8th grade, because I talked a lot.
I got you. So now you say you grew up in Florida and Georgia. You were born in Georgia?
No, I was born in Florida.
And then grew up in Georgia. And how old were you before you went to Georgia from Florida?
When we moved to Georgia, I was about 12.
12.
Yeah, because I remember 5th grade was my last grade in Florida before we moved to Georgia. And I was already 1 grade behind. So, in 5th grade, I believe you're 10 years old. So I was probably 12, 11 going on 12 years old.
Okay, so now in this time period, do you recall anything that made education stand out to you, that you felt that, hey, I'm failing in school and all this kind of thing, and I'm living in these 2 different places? Was there anything significant that you can say that made you focus on education?
Yes. I enjoyed school. I enjoyed school, but again, my behavior, I talked a lot, and that was disrupted towards, not just the teacher, but other students. But what really stood out to me was, I was this challenging kid. I always tried to be the best speller in school. I didn't mind getting up in front of the class, reading, from out of the social studies book is what they called it back then. I didn't mind getting up reading in class and, just performing in front of the class, when the teacher wanted us to, volunteer read.
So in other words, you had all this energy and insight to do, you just didn't have it in perspective yet. So that was coming a little bit later, because according to your bio, you definitely caught on.
That's correct.
So, okay, so now we're in Georgia. It says you have one brother, two sisters.
A younger brother.
Younger brother.
We're all 2 years apart.
2 years apart, and the two sisters are older or younger?
They're older. As a matter of fact, my brother is 2 years younger than me.
Okay.
Then my younger sister is 2 years older than me, and my oldest sister is 4 years older than me. So
Okay.
we're all like stepladder, like 2 years apart.
And,
with the two girls being the oldest.
Oh, okay, very good. So, was there any inspiration on their part with education? Did you kind of look at what they were doing that made you change, or?
You know, that's a good question. My oldest sister, a certain part of my life, I kind of followed her footsteps.
Okay.
And reason being, you know, she was the positive role model, influence in my entire family. Because again, I didn't say this, but I was raised by 13 women.
Wow.
And, you know, they were on welfare and they didn't work and they didn't have an education.
So let's say the 13 women in your collective life, in your immediate surrounding there.
Yes.
And obviously your one would be your mom and two others would be your two sisters?
My mom, my two sisters, my female cousin.
Okay.
My mom, 4 sisters.
Okay.
And my
Was your
mom's
grandma there?
My grandma,
Okay.
exactly. And then best friend of the family who had 5 daughters who were also older than me.
And were also in school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I can see that there was some influence there. Now, just not to leave us out as male guys, was there any male positive role models at that time?
Not at all.
And was there any that you've seen on TV or out in life that you wanted to adorn yourself by?
You know what?
Or with, I should say.
You know what? The earlier part of my life, no. As far as TV, you know, I would like to watch entertainment TV, you know, like Soul Train and American Bandstand and so on and so forth. But no, I can recall probably the first male role model I looked up to was when I went to Job Corps.
When you went to Job Corps, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it says because you dropped out of school at 8th grade, and you attended Job Corps at the age of 18. Okay, so who was this male figure that?
You know, it was a couple of them. And for an example, the resident advisor. When you're in Job Corps, you have a resident advisor or advisors who watch over you, and they were my positive role models. You know, like teachers in Job Corps, male teachers in Job Corps, the resident advisor who kept us. In other words, when we get out of class and we go back to our dorms, there was a male guy who would stay. Who would be there maybe from in the morning. Or afternoon, like 2 or 3 o'clock, and he would leave maybe 1 or 2 o'clock, but we're sleeping. You know, that person, was my...
Was the inspiration.
Yes.
Inspiration. Real quick, just a little background on Job Corps. I'm familiar with it because I grew up in the old day, and you don't hear about Job Corps as much. Give us a little breakdown, definition of Job Corps. It is what?
Job Corps is it's a government, I believe, federal government
funded,
program that allow males and females between the ages of 16 and 24 years old. You know, they go into the Job Corps. They take college courses. They take academic classes. For me, I didn't graduate from high school, so I didn't have. I didn't even go to high school, so I didn't have a diploma. So, but you take GED courses for 3 hours, and then you take 3 hours of skill trade.
Right.
And again, Job Corps has all these trades, from welding, plumbing, basic business, clerical, cooking, culinary arts.
Which you took advantage of that because it says welder, basic business, clerical, UAW, auto parts, radio, TV, broadcasting, announcing, journalism. That's pretty extensive, man. That's quite impressive, and I'm glad that Job Corps was there because that shows that particular, institution works for children in your type of scenario, and that's important. Well, I mean, that right there, with you not having any inspirations, male figures, prior to that's pretty good. Yeah,
that's where I would say I started to engage and be in the company of other males, although they were my age group. You know, you would just, you know, if you see someone doing something positive, like another guy in class doing his work, you know, you just
Follow
yeah,
through
you
with
just
that.
follow that
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
you know, and apply that,
Right.
you know, to yourself, and that's how it goes.
And that's part of what this show is about, you know, about how important education is. And before we're done, you'll have a very good idea of this gentleman and his ability to embrace what seems like no resources out of nowhere. You know, this man is inspired, I should say, so much to the point where he accomplished all these things. So you got 3 categories here. You got, let's see, internship, what was that, volunteer, and what was the other one? Education. So you want to go from there?
Jump
You
in,
want to start with
sure.
the education or something
Yeah,
else?
I could, you know, I could start with the education because
very
that's what
good.
happened first.
Okay.
Again, I'm gonna start from Job Corps.
Okay.
I did 3 years in Job Corps, and I took, as you stated, welding, basic business clerical, and UAW, which is United Auto Workers and Parts. I graduated. I took a job placement, and I moved to Indiana, and I worked at a parts distribution company, you know, distributing parts. And yeah, I did that for about 3 years, and then my mom got into a bind back in Georgia, and so I relocated from Indiana to Georgia to build a foundations for my mom, you know, and help her with her life, you know,
Right.
come back from, you know, the hardships, you know, that she had endured. And so I ended up being 9 years in Georgia. I got my GED, you know, although I was 20, I believe about 26 years old, I got my GED.
Okay. I'm just going to kind of wrap it up right here because we got the
Okay.
pause for a commercial. But we'll be right back in a few minutes here.
If I got to go to college, oh my goodness. I like discovering new things. You get to see what works for you and what doesn't. That helps you evolve as a person. You get to make like a supernova of skill or talent or whatever it is. I've always wanted to go to college. I just feel like that's my destiny. My name is Queen, and I am your dividend.
Start off where we left
Education.
off at with the education, absolutely. And you were elaborating. Go ahead.
Yeah, my first time really educating myself consciously was going back to school. Getting my GED. What inspired me to finally get the GED at 26 years old was one of my buddies was a firefighter for the city of Atlanta. And he said to me, the fire department is hiring. All you need is a GED or high school diploma. I was already taking classes to prep classes to take the GED test because I was lacking 4 points. So I took the test. I went out and took the test. I passed it, and I made it to the fire academy. Decided after I got in the academy I didn't want to pursue that, and so I went to technical college. I went to technical college for 2 years, and I took heating and air conditioning. I liked it that because I made a lot of money. So I ended up doing that for about 3 years, and decided I no longer wanted to do that. So I transitioned from HVAC and went to a broadcasting school back in Atlanta. And I took some courses in radio and TV broadcasting and announcing and graduated. I did a couple of internships, you know, and after graduating from the broadcasting school. I did a couple of internships with 2 different radio stations and at my church, my local church. And I learned some aspects of television production. And after I graduated, I decided to relocate to California. And you know, upon my arrival in California, I didn't know anyone. I came here with $100 and a dream like everyone else outside of California come here for. And I lived on Skid Row, which is the shelter. Because again, I didn't know anyone. I bought a one-way bus ticket and took the bus. I remember leaving Georgia Wednesday. I got here on Friday. I also had all of my directions from the Greyhound bus station to the shelter, who had told me prior to coming here that they could provide me with food and shelter. And so I took those directions from Greyhound bus station. I went to the shelter, which was the Los Angeles Mission, right on 5th, I believe 5th and St. Julian, something like that. Mission. Yeah, I stayed on Skid Row, and the rest is history. I lived on Skid Row for a few months. I was applying for jobs, with different radio stations and television stations.
That's what I wanted to ask you. What inspired you to go into the broadcasting journalism field?
Good question.
What was your inspiration?
When I was doing heating and air conditioning, I had a roommate who, and he was just, a year or two older than me. This guy was making six figures. He was making $100,000 a year plus. And he also had a college degree in accounting. And he came home one day, I'm sitting up, in the house, bored, not happy with what I was doing, which was the HVAC. And he said, I remember him saying to me, he said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I'm not happy." And he said, "Why?" He said, "You're making a lot of money. You're almost making as much money as me. And you didn't even go to school. I mean, you went to school, but not as long as he did for the accounting, because I believe he had his master's degree in accounting."
And you only had AA or BA or something?
I only had a diploma from heating and air conditioning school.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, and so I asked him, I said to him, I remember saying to him, I don't want to do this job. And he said, "Well, what is it you want to do?" And I said to him, you have a master's degree in accounting. You have college experience. You grew up with both parents who are still married 30-something years. I said, that means to me you're a smart person. You can help me figure out what I want to do in my life. So this brother sat me down with a pencil and a piece of paper. And at the time, I didn't even know what brainstorming and clustering meant at the time, because I only had a GED and a heating and air conditioning diploma.
So you said brainstorming and clustering?
Brainstorming and clustering.
Now, what does clustering mean?
Okay, when I sat down with this piece of paper and pencil, he had me write down one word, but a group of words that I can think that identified me, and that what other people who knew me, like family and friends, knew about me.
You.
Yeah, exactly. And so I ended up with this piece of paper with all these words on it. Then that's when the brainstorming came in. No, the clustering. He had me cluster, going back to your what does clustering mean? He had me look at all those different words that described myself, and he wanted me to match them up. And giving you an example, like, if you were to give me apple, pear, peach, lemon, tangerine, so on and so forth, how would and you tell me to group.
In other words, the relative aspects of that peach or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, what's interesting is journalism. You mentioned earlier the things that got you in trouble in school was talking all the time. And it came back to be something good later on in life, and it's just a natural knack that you had for doing that.
Yes.
So that's very interesting how, full circle and coming back to something that you have a knack for.
Yes.
So that's very interesting.
And you know what? After the brainstorming and the clustering, that's what he came up with. He said to me, "You should be in broadcast." He said, "You should be in television and broadcasting." And when he said that to me, I said, "I have to go to college to do that, right?" And he said, "Yes, you can do it." And I was like, "College is hard. I can't do it." He said, "You just graduated a couple of years ago from technical college." And I said, I said to him, just making all these excuses, technical college is different from university. And I didn't know anything about college,
Right.
besides, I had some past friends when I had dropped out of school was in college, so on and so forth. But yeah, he said, you can do it. And I started to believe in him. And remember, this guy was older than me, and he had a degree and so on, had this good life.
Actually, you were starting to believe in yourself.
Yes, exactly. And so he said, you should be in broadcasting. We went online. We found the broadcasting school, which was the Atlanta Broadcast Institute. I enrolled. The tuition was $5,000. I paid the tuition, and I ended up graduating from the school.
What, a 3.86 grade
Yes.
average? Very
Yes.
good. From 2000, in the year 2000. Instructions in the practical application theory, criticism, ethics, policy, and practice of broadcast communications. Very good, very good. So that means when you take on something, you really take it to heart and get down and do the bones of it.
Yes.
And that's so important. And again, tied to a thing that at one time was a drawback, but with it being nourished and properly, how should I say, put in perspective, it's to your advantage. The talking too much. Now you're a journalist and a broadcaster. That is a way to take things that may be considered a negative and making it a positive, especially if it's something that applies to you, that makes you feel good about yourself.
Yes.
The gentleman, by having you write the cluster, of course, he was able to see from your own mind, by the things that you wrote down,
Yes.
which direction you should go.
Yes.
So that was very, very good instruction. And these are things that we could do at home with our families
Yes.
to find out how to help our children and guide them and support them in different areas, finding out what they want to do in life
Yes.
and how to get there.
As opposed to the parent telling the child or the kid
Right, what to
they
do.
should. Yeah.
Yeah, find out what the kid wants to do.
Yes.
And the kid can find out what they want to do themselves.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's inspiration in itself. Because it's so many times we find, people 50, 60, 70 never really knowing what they wanted to do in life.
Or even who they are.
Or who they are.
Right.
And that's still another story there in itself.
Yes.
So now this is education. You also have California State University of Los Angeles here.
Well, actually, before Cal State, before I entered at Cal State LA, I worked on my associate's degree, and in journalism, and that was a struggle also because when I first started community college, I went to get into theater because I was the Michael Jackson. The OJs, the Whisperers. I was that kid growing up, doing all the dances, and mimicking black R&B, singers and groups. I was that kid. I played baseball, I ran track. And so, I liked the entertainment, being able to entertain others. So when I started community college, my major was theater. And then I remember taking my very first theater class, and I was like, no, this isn't what I want to do, because I'm also shy. I could be shy also.
Shy side,
I have a shy side, and so I ended up changing my major to radio and TV broadcasting, like I had did previous years in Georgia.
Right.
And so. I ended up working on my associate's degree, completed all my general ed, which was in the Bay Area, and got my associate's degree in journalism.
This was where were you attending school at
This
this
was
time?
in San Bruno,
San
and the
Bruno.
school was Skyline Community College.
Skyline Community College here.
Yes.
2007 to 2009.
Yes.
And there was a 3.33 average. Those are all excellent
GPAs.
grades, GPAs that reflect your focus. And we spoke about that prior to coming on the camera, about how important it is to focus, because we know in America and all the dynamics that we have as black men, quote unquote, so-called, it's very important that in the dynamics of life that you keep your focus and go after what it is that you're trying to achieve. Because if you allow yourself to be distracted too much, then you'll take your eye off the prize. And that's one thing that I discuss with you about.
You know, you're exactly right. And that's why I decided to do this show, because I understand my black brothers out there who's dropped out of school, who's using drugs, who's selling drugs, who's growing up with a
And you
single
had an
mom.
experience.
I had
with
all those
that.
experiences.
Elaborate a little bit on that. How did that enter into your life, and you overcoming it with all this education? Real quick, because we're gonna go to another break here in a minute.
Okay, again, I got on drugs, smoking marijuana and cigarettes after I dropped out of the 8th grade, because when I dropped out of school, I had nothing to do. So I started running with guys in the neighborhood, and who were smoking cigarettes and drinking and hanging out. Then I started to do what they were doing. But to make a long story short, when I became older, as I grew older, I said this to myself: if I started drugs, smoking cigarettes and drinking with guys in the neighborhood, I was doing that because they were doing it.
Yeah, you were mimicking them.
Yes. So if I was doing these bad things because someone else was doing it, that really wasn't a conscious choice that I made. That was unconscious.
Exactly.
Because I was following someone else.
Exactly.
And when you're following someone, to me, that's not being conscious, of what you're doing. You're just following someone else. But when I decide, I can say the first conscious decision I made in life was to stop using drugs and alcohol, and that was 11 years this summer.
Okay.
And I'm happy, and I didn't have to go to a rehabilitation center or drug center. I just, again, I've always evaluated myself, things I do and things I say, and once you have that awareness about yourself, you can pretty much go from there and make the best decisions that you can for yourself. And so that I can say that's the very first conscious decision
That you made. Well, right
was to
there,
quit
we're going to
using
take a
drugs.
break. We'll be right back.
Okay.